This title, Congress is coming after your 401k. America's pension crisis is getting worse. I'm going to be covering several different articles, all dealing with the ongoing pension crisis we're experiencing here in America and what is to come. And so we're only 4 days into the new year, and already we have news about countries deciding to remove themselves or rethink the dollar, or aka dump the dollar. President Erdogan in Turkey tells his citizens in order to help the country out, it'd be in your best interest to go under your pillow, grab the dollars, the euros, and gold. And as you tell them today's title, how the baby boomers will lose their retirement nest egg, I want to share with you a couple thoughts as well as some articles on how the next market correction will be catastrophic for a lot of people.
All right, here we are. Little RTD midday news updates. I wanted to check in with you guys. Came across a couple of interesting articles, and it has not been more than 24 hours, and already there's plans on bailing out, propping up, and papering over the oil and gas industry. So are you surprised? I'm sure you're not. Neither am I. And so I want to just touch on a couple articles here, and then I have an interview with Mr. Jeffrey Booth coming in about an hour and a half, give or take. And so he's a technology guy that offers a very unique perspective on how technology has shifted the global economy and some of the things that he feels it's coming. I think it's going to be worth your time. So make sure you guys tune into that one at 2:30 Eastern Standard Time. And so as always, before I dive into these articles, I have about 2, 4, 6, 7, maybe 7 or 8 articles. I'll try to get through them as fast as I can and get some of your feedback on these articles, share my 2 cents on top of it, and go from there. So let me check in via chat and see who's tuning in thus far. Make sure my audio is good. And so let me know if everything is coming across pretty well. We got Stack Attack. We got Low Blood Pressure, New York Redneck. We got Eddie Cruz per bar. Appreciate you guys for taking time to join me this afternoon. And so let me get right into it. And so here we are. Literally, say, we just say keep it at a good number. Say 30 days into this current depression, and we're just beginning to see some of the monetary tools being used by central banks all over the world, and it's starting to reflect on their balance sheets to where the numbers we're being given, as I got some numbers here, it mentions that as of right now, the Federal Reserve is providing $41 billion per day, and just all around the planet. And so we're just starting to get figures back from Q1 on all the companies that's having issues and their projections on the losses that they're incurring, or they incurred first quarter. And we're witnessing all types of stimulus being thrown at everything that shows signs of lack of growth. And we're not really even into the worst of what possibly will be unfolding in Q2 as this lockdown continues and the global economy continues to contract. And so it's just a matter of time before we see figures thrown out there that will just blow our minds, all while not necessarily seeing it reflected in the price of goods and services just yet. And so there's a couple people that's saying that within the next couple of months, there's no way they can hide all that liquidity that's been thrown around without it rearing its head on Main Street. And so once again, we know that if we were to ask the Federal Reserve, according to their measurements, they probably would say they still are not at that 2.2% inflation rate that they would like. And so they need more. But yet, once again, we know their numbers and their metrics are completely off from reality. So with that being the case, I want to dive right into the very first article. But before I dive any further, for those that are tuning in, first-time viewers or whatnot, make sure you guys connect with me on these sources here. If you're not on there, definitely get involved with that, and so you can stay in tune with other things I put up throughout the day. And just in case YouTube decides to not allow this channel to continue, you can follow me on those channels down there. And so all the videos actually are saved on BitChute as well, so make sure you guys get over there and subscribe there. And so let me get into this very first article here. So this is actually from yesterday, but the visual aid was something that I couldn't help but want to share. And so it says, some zero hedge, it says, central banks have pumped an annualized $23.4 trillion into the financial system. And then it goes through some of the details and some figures. But the graphs here are undeniable. And the fact that we're witnessing, and all these things here we're seeing is, we see the blue, that was the quantitative tightening done by the Federal Reserve up until October and officially that September timeframe when they realized they could no longer take away all the accommodative policies that they've pumped out for 10 plus years, and more was needed. And so since then, we have all the other central banks. We got Japan, Eurozone, Canada, United Kingdom, Switzerland, Australia, New Zealand. They've all become very accommodative to their economies. They're basically just ruining their currency as well, just like every other central bank. But just look, within this short time frame, literally since March 20th, so the end of March, give or take, look at what has happened as far as this spike up of their balance sheets where they're throwing currency at everything to try to plug holes in the economy all around the world in their own country. But then we got the reserve currency and the Federal Reserve. They're trying to pump currency into all types of nations to help with that overseas, all the debt that's in denominated dollars over there. So here's another article here. And so this is what really caught my attention to really want to live stream today. It says the Fed is buying 41 billion of assets daily, and it's not alone. And so once again, we have another graph here where quantitative easing. So we're in the new norm from here on out until there's a new system of some kind rolled out will be quantitative. It's going to start with All right, so it looks like I was disconnected for a quick second there. Let me make sure everything is tuned back in. And let me see here. Making sure. Okay, so we are flowing again. So once again, a little hiccup here. But as I was saying, and I'm going to actually keep this relatively sweet and simple. But as I was saying, quantitative destruction of capital from here on out. There's no way of winding this back. So the end result of all of this stimulus or legal counterfeiting, as I call it, is the destruction of wealth, destruction of capital in paper and digital stuff, according to the old norm, which is no longer. And so here we go. So I'll put this in the chat for those that might have an interest in looking at some of these figures, because they are it's very disturbing when you look at it, how majority of the world still is not really paying attention to what's going on to their financial realm. And a lot of people on Facebook and all the social media is talking about the Michael Jordan documentary or some crap like that, as if sports and all that stuff will ever go back to being what we were used to it being. So let everybody stick to what they know. Anyway, so let me check on the chat real quick, see what else is going on there, and then we'll keep this thing rolling. And so it says lower than gain on your mic. Oh, okay. So it looks like my mic is a little loud, so I'll lower it and then back up some. So hopefully that's better. I need to find myself some storage and get paid to pick up the oil. Rest in peace, petrodollar. Bring troops home. Yeah, and now you would think that, man. So that would be another whole other issue there. If the petrodollar system is no longer in play, what's the need in having our military spread all across the world? And so I'd imagine before those troops come home, the powers that be will probably want to get that last bit of use out of all that military action by probably causing some type of event that would require our military to be utilized one last time before they were forced to come home, if it got to a worst case scenario like that. Your sound is drowned out by my machines. Oh. So I need to cut it up some. Love the interview with Greg Manrino. Daryl, I appreciate that, my friend. So let me just try to adjust the mic just a little bit. So we should be good to go. All right. So let's keep it going right away. Next article here. And I'll make sure I put this stuff in the... So here's something as well. Just more information about how the Federal Reserve has weaponized the Federal Reserve note, which is their product, and so that's a part of their game plan. Ultimately, is to take over the world by indebting and enslaving humanity, and then they themselves buying up everything with their own legally current counterfeited currency, becoming the owners of mortgages, equities, government debt, anything you name that's actually real. They probably will throw paper at it and end up being the owners because it'll be on their balance sheet. So they'll get the shareholders of the Federal Reserve System will win according to the way they're setting this up, unfortunately. And so here's just more information here about the details as to how the Federal Reserve is making sure they are providing accommodations for every bank that does business in dollar-denominated instruments. And so feel free to read more for that if you want to. I'll put it in the chat here. It says a LeBron James document will be named the last choke. Take delivery of gold at negative price. So that's another thing, like, because all of this, the price mechanisms for all commodities, gold and silver is money, but yet, since it's become something after it was allowed to be purchased again by your everyday person back in the 74, it's now listed as a commodity, and the price is discovered on those COMEX and all those future trading platforms. So I heard somebody mention that, oil, the futures for this current time frame is negative true, and you can't pay people to really take it. But yet with gold, I doubt there will not be any metal to actually deliver for I'm sure people would definitely want to take possession of that, but yet I don't think it's going to be something that they're going to have a problem with people wanting to take off their hands. Problem is, there's nothing there. So here's another article here. It says, as airline bailouts begin, Trump urges aid for U.S. oil and gas industry. So just as of yesterday, at the end of the business day, President Trump basically said that we can't allow, I'll actually pull that up here. So this article talks a little bit about the current airline situation, and they gave a list. There's a list out of all the airlines and how much they've received. And of course, it's not enough. So they're going to need some more additional stimulus. And so here we got just in, the airline bailouts have officially begun. U.S. Treasury handed out $2.9 billion today. More going out soon. Airlines approved so far: Allegiant, American, Delta, Southwest, Spirit, and United. So once again, they're paying corporations, which is ultimately being funneled to the investors and to the shareholders. They're going to get the funds. And keeping payroll and there's no business is not a good business model. But of course, that's not what it's all about. But this is the tweet of the day. And so this tweet right here pretty much probably is biggest news story on the planet right now, because everyone knew it was coming. It says, President Trump tweeted this morning, "We will never let the great U.S. oil and gas industry down." Okay, like, you probably say that about the restaurant industry, airline industry, automotive industry, farming industry is another farming bailout, some billion given out not long ago. I didn't see it in mainstream news, but I saw some stories under the surface that mentioned that they're bail out the farms again. So that's maybe the fourth round, I think, over the last year or two. So yeah, pretty much Trump has made it clear that he will let nothing stand in the way of him making sure he provides all the loans or forgiveness debts or whatever you want to call it. And so he's pretty much concerned with November 3rd. I heard his press conference yesterday. November 3rd is, still he's waiting on his reelection. So once again, what type of country will we have during the second term if everything has been plastered over and we're still supposed to be battling a health scare? We'll see. It says, I have instructed the Secretary of Energy and Secretary of Treasury to formulate a plan. What type of plan can you formulate that will be different than the plans already in play? Extend some loans, which are that currency that's going to be extended in the form of a loan, or the government might actually nationalize the oil and gas sector by, the same thing with the airlines, taking shares or outright ownership, or, who knows what this plan is. But yet, once again, Uncle Sam is tapped out, but yet they're going to go on the hook more and formulate a plan, which the plan is basically just, borrow and create and spend and take ownership in. It says, which will make funds available so these very important companies and jobs will be secured long into the future. So they're trying to further expand our debt. So the national debt will definitely reach all-time highs outside of all the stuff we're seeing now. And they're talking about securing the long-term future in a currency that they're deliberately destroying. Not quite sure how that works, but yet I'm assuming they know exactly what they want as far as the outcome. So let me check back in with the chat and see what thoughts am I missing out here. So it says, RTD, too many people say no hyperinflation without velocity. What do you think? Low blood pressure. Man, that is, And so today I'm excited to actually interview Jeff Booth because he goes deep in saying that he's anticipating a severe deflation first, and I'm not sure where he stands on hyperinflation, so I'm looking forward to getting his thoughts on that. But hyperinflation, I'm of the mindset that at some point, as a result of all this weaponizing of our national currency and the reserve currency, the way that it's on pace to do at the end of all this, or as this unwinds, there will be no way to avoid a situation where the cost of living and the cost of goods no longer align with the amount of units in existence. So something has to give. Like you cannot print food, you cannot print water. I saw an article today about drinking water because of some of the chemical elements of that go into retreating water for the cities. It's a little bit costly now, so there might be some water issues soon. So the real tangible things you cannot print, you cannot create, you cannot just bring into existence from nothing. So there's going to always be a supply of actual essentials that we need to survive. But yet there will be an unlimited amount of stimulus being thrown all over the planet. And that stimulus has to go into those limited supply of goods and services, ultimately create an environment where those prices will be increased in price. So now the severity, whether or not it's like Weimar, where within a day or two we're rushing to get rid of paper and digits because of a lack of bread on shelves. I'm not sure of the time frame of that, but it is impossible, in my opinion, to exponentially expand balance sheets and create M2's money supply, paper or digital, and it not lead to problems when it comes to things we need. So hyperinflation is the end result of all this stuff that's happening. Now the time frame, I don't know, because in prior years we didn't have a computer system and technology to hide and paper over and digitize things. Because as we know from prior hyperinflations, even in Zimbabwe, it was a matter of just spinning off notes. They were printing, like literally printing and putting them things out. Whereas now they're printing, but as I mentioned, there's pallets of currency sitting in vaults that's not hitting Main Street yet because they're able to put some of that on their ledgers or whatnot in a digital form. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I'm definitely had that question for Mr. Jeff Booth today. Alongo says, they are trying to destroy the currency when they are giving free currency to people who haven't lost their jobs. They just don't care. Very good point. Very good point. And I think pretty soon it's going to be a lot easier for people to buy into the concepts of distinguishing between money and currency. Because money right now, it's hard to source in the form of metals. We're seeing a lot of people having issues with being able to source gold and silver. But then with currency, as being mentioned here, it's abundant, and it's going to be a lot more plentiful in the days ahead. And we're just 30 days into the great default, or the great devaluation, as I'm going to call it. It says reform.org. This shows up the goals and agendas. Weforum.org. This shows up the goals and agendas. David, okay, definitely. I'm going to check that out. I appreciate you for sharing that one. Let me see here. I'll definitely come back to that. Okay, so let me keep moving right along. And so let's get to some other things that, once again, never really made sense. I was questioning it from day one. I'm assuming that we all questioned it because, once again, how do you distinguish between those that are small and those that are mom and pops, other than just the workload, the workforce, and the areas they're in? But it looks like, as I mentioned, here are the largest public companies taking payroll loans meant for small businesses. So SBA loans, the PPP, the payroll program, all that stuff was being touted as something for the community, small mom and pop stores, but rushing out something within 2 weeks that's not clearly defined leaves a big open window of opportunity for people to take advantage of it. And so here's a list of all the companies that are publicly traded that have already applied and received in a very timely manner. And then you read about other stories where your local stores, local community shops, they're still waiting. But yet the first round is tapped out because all the big boys got their funds first. And on top of that, let me click on here. Look at this. This is the PPP loans to public companies. So these are publicly traded companies. And so look at the market cap for some of these companies. The very first one has the biggest, $405 million. And they got a loan. DMC Global got a loan for $6.7 million. Now the question is, what in the world will $6.7 million actually accomplish other than those funds, because I don't know how big of an organization they are, but it's good to say that 6.7 if they are a large or a 50-man roster or whatever. 6.7 million after it goes to the executives more than likely, and definitely some shareholders are going to get a little something out of that. They're going to divide that up amongst their the boardroom first, and it will not make it down to the employees more than likely. But then again, what can 6.7 million accomplish within an 8-week window that all this PP loans was meant to actually accomplish? But then look at here, all these other companies here. 286 million, 273 million. All these are definitely not mom and pop type stores here or shops. So the very smallest one on this list is a $6 million market cap company, and TSR, they received 6.7. So they got in stimulus more than they're even worth. And so are you surprised? I'm definitely not. And so what this tells me is that the allocation and the management of this funds that went through the banking sector was already used, and the people on this list are the people closest to the too big to fail banks that probably would stand to lose some of those funds by this lockdown. So those funds probably went directly to the shareholders of some of these companies just to pad their pockets a little bit, because they know that round 2 is coming. Is going to be a lot more. So all this small business narrative is not for small businesses, because they would like, I would imagine, to see small business actually go out of business so that they can monopolize even more of all types of industries, leaving your mom and pop stores out hanging high and dry. And so here's another question I want to throw out there. Should there have been bailouts, period, in an environment where opening up business comes with risk? But it's unfortunately that right now it's like globally systemic risk. But yet, why not just let these businesses close and then increase the stimulus to the people and let the people decide who they want to spend their currency with in the form of these companies here? So this is just some of the big boy players here. So I actually put this in the chat here for those that might want to read up on this one. And here we have Harry. Appreciate the love offer. My son says, please look up the Clade X pandemic exercise. Okay, let me see what. Okay, copy. Let me go ahead and check this out. Let me see what we got here. All right, I will check into that. See what pops up with that one. Clade X. Let me see. Center for Health exercise. Here's that Clade X exercise. It says Johns Hopkins Center for Health and Security hosted the Clade X pandemic table exercise on May 15th, 2018. Okay, so we got more of a planned operation here. It says the purpose of the exercise was to illustrate high-level strategic decisions and policies the United States and the world will need to pursue in order to prevent a pandemic or diminish. Okay, so more structured and organized gathering of the elite on planning how this will play out. So this goes back to 2018, and look who's in the center of it. The same people who are giving us the numbers on the current amount of infections and things like that. So I appreciate you for sharing this. So this is more of the narrative that this was even more so a planned event, well beyond that events 201 from last year. And so I showed, I think it was 2010, if I'm not mistaken, one of the Rockefeller documentations that pointed out that there was one of 4 things on their list of what we can expect for our future, and this current pandemic situation was on there. So clearly the Rockefellers already had this planned out, and they were funding all these organizations and getting everything ready for the 2020 rollout of what we're experiencing now. So, this event that we're experiencing now was planned well before we, got to this point, or even this event here. So I appreciate you for sharing that. Let me keep moving right along. Okay, so let me get through a couple more. Let me get through a couple more little things here, and then we can dial back and get ready for that interview. So here is something else that I think is worth mentioning. It says, just more information on Trump. Trump says oil and gas bailout plan is being prepared. Now, here's one of the things I think we should all be looking for. What type of new plan can they create outside of what they've already shown us? Like I've always mentioned, the only thing government has shown that it's efficient at doing is creating a problem and then giving us a solution for it, and the solution ends up being more of the same thing that created the problem, with basically, and it has to do with currency, like, you know, borrow and then spend, borrow and spend. And now eventually they're not going to be able to really tax us because no one's really making anything, and everything is being provided as stimulus and is not necessarily considered as income. And so I've saw a lot of stuff about, you know, will they be re-taxing the stimulus? And according to some figures from tax people and whatnot, it's not classified as income, so they're not going to tax it. And so the question will be, when they roll out that digital stuff, will that be universal basic income to where it'll be taxable? Or will it be universal basic allowance or universal basic stimulus, where they're going to also not want to tax that in hopes of people going out and spending? And so we will see. But then here's the very last article I'll share with you guys. And I thought this was interesting because this is what's happening, or being reported from what's happening on the other side of the planet. And it says, while Americans hoarded toilet paper, hand sanitizer, and masks, Russians withdrew $13.6 billion in cash from ATMs. And so after thumbing through this, it looks like they're experiencing the same type of lockdowns over there that we're experiencing here. And so out of fear of not being able to actually leave their house and go out and get cash while or during the bank implosion that they're going to experience, people went out and went to the ATMs to take out paper. And then the government in Russia was saying that they're following the World Health Organization's advice on encouraging people to stay away from cash and to go digital. And so it looks like there's a concerted effort by all governments on the planet to spew off the same information from the HWO about the dangers of cash and the need for something safer in the form of contactless payment services, which happens to be the usher into our new digital age that they want us to go down anyway. So it looks like everything is right on course. The Federal Reserve is expanding their balance sheet. We're just beginning this stimulation process, and there's more companies that will get bailed out, papered over. And then the question is, if they couldn't unwind 10 years ago, they couldn't tighten, which means they couldn't sell that stuff that they're buying and taking onto the balance sheets, how will they be able to unwind bailing out the entire world? It's not possible. So the end result of all this will be the need of something new. And I'd imagine, as we've witnessing now, they already have something planned for us, but it's just a matter of getting the remaining life out of this current paradigm before we roll it into something else. So this is what's going on in the news. I thought I would just take a minute, share what's happening, get your guys' thoughts on it. And other than that, we'll be back at it in an hour with Mr. Jeffrey Booth. Definitely tune back in. And to encourage more participation, beneath this video, go grab the link to that particular interview and then share that with your family and friends or whatnot. Get them involved in conversation. Get them to ask or be willing to accept some answers about some difficult questions that, you know, I think people should be. Peace.
Hey there, sorry for this interruption, but I wanted to bring something to your attention. If you've been enjoying this live stream, why don't you partner with me and be a support to the channel via Patreon membership for just a minimum of $5 a month. All you have to do is scroll down beneath this video here, click the Patreon link, then consider donating as little as $5 a month towards the channel. A little bit of crumbs can go a long way, and I appreciate your support. Now, let's get back to this live stream. Hey there, hope all is well. Back at you today with some more RTD News updates. And as you can tell from today's title, Congress is coming after your 401k.